Bigger than capes.
Give me some outside.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I am Zac, and this week I'm joined by all of you. Say hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Hi, guys.
Great job. You want to do an individual, like, hi, I'm this guy, and I do this thing? And...
Hi, I'm this guy, and I do this thing.
It's immediately going to do it.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Matt.
He's that guy, and he does that thing.
Yep, Matt.
Yeah, if you can all just shout your names, please.
Will.
Angela.
Okay, this has been a painfully awkward start to the episode, and I am having a good old time. This is our first. I'm going to tell people like what this is, so they're like not just in the dark.
It's sound waves being blasted into your ears.
So this is our first roundup, indie roundup, as we're calling it. Our best of January, I guess, or maybe not best of January, but the January we have experienced.
The ones we decided are the best.
Yeah, the ones that looked most interesting.
Yeah,
To us.
Yeah.
at the time of choosing comics. So we're going to talk about 4 books. That's allegedly one choice each, and definitely not just all the number ones we found.
It was quite a sparse one.
Mine was a choice. Mine was a definite choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some choices.
Mine. A choice was made.
But first, Matt, tell us something about our sponsor. Swerve, what?
Yeah, so we are, as always, sponsored by Travelling Man. They have stores at Zac,
York, Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester.
And they are great. They're currently you can't go actually into the stores due to the lockdown situation, but they are available still online at Zac.
Travellingman.com.
Thank you, Zac. Yeah, they're great. I've been going there for an amount of time that makes me feel incredibly old when I think about it. They always have an incredible range of comics, board games, collectibles and memorabilia, all sorts. Like, yeah, if you want your Magic the Gathering cards or whatever other trading cards that the youth are playing these days.
It's okay, we're not the BBC. Other trading cards are available.
I am out of touch enough to be working at the BBC. They're great. You should definitely buy your comics from them.
Well said, Matt. I appreciate I sprung that on you, but I like to think you bounced back quite well.
Thank you. I just couldn't remember anything.
Any of the travelling trivia.
Apart from I was like, well, I know they have a store in York and Manchester.
That's all we can ask. So, how would people feel about news? You guys want some comic book news?
I love some comic book news.
Hell, do you guys have any comic book news? No.
You expect us to be prepared for the news segment? No.
Jolly good. All right, I've got 3 things.
Yay.
I'm going to go at them in no particular order, and you're all going to react as if you're excited by them and not just kind of apathetic. So, first up, when myself and William here talked about Heathen, we talked about the fact that Rom V had been announced for a new Vault title this year with Anand RK doing the art. And we got into the fact that it was either going to be Mecha Kaiju rom-com or it was going to be post-apocalyptic radio. And now we know it's post-apocalyptic radio. It's.
I thought you were going to say it was going to be both.
I'm disappointed now.
No, what we're actually getting is Radio Apocalypse. The art style is much more Graffiti's Wall than Blue and Green. Those are two touchstones of different art styles if you've read any Anand R.K. drawn books before. And the description that this book has been given is a mixtape for the end of times.
I think just the premise of it sounds rad. So everything I've read from Ram V so far has been pretty good. So, yeah, I'll have more, please.
Yeah. No, that sounds really interesting. Like, whilst I am sad that I'm not going to finally get my book where, like, Rodan and Anguiros have to deal with the romantic tension between them. I am happy to get this radio based post-apocalyptic book.
If he hasn't got a chapter called "All We Need Is Radio Geiger Counter," then
all we need is Radio Geiger. That's great.
Yes.
I'm pretty pleased with myself.
Yeah.
Actually, don't edit this out because I'm keeping it. I don't want that stolen. That's good.
You want that copyrighted?
Yeah. Copyright.
Post this
Yeah.
podcast to me.
Make sure that you've got it time stamped when he said that.
It's good material.
It's all good stuff, guys. I'm proud of it. I think it's safe to say Radio Apocalypse issue 1 is probably going to appear in a future roundup, but
Definitely, yeah.
and I'm all about it. So yeah. Then I've got another title, another new one by a bunch of indie people we like as well, and Image teased quite extensively for the best part of some time, a week, 2, 7, who knows? No, probably a week. That they were doing a book with Michael Walsh, Chip Zdarsky, Kelly Thompson, Ed Brisson, and Jeff Lemire. And that's going to be called The Silver Coin, and it's going to be a horror anthology
I was
that
going
has...
to say, with that sort of killer's row, you want it to be it'd be really dope to have a new anthology.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's an anthology with one artist and various writers, which is kind of different in
It's funny. I can't remember where I read it, but I read somewhere of somebody complaining they just don't make comics in anthologies anymore like they used to in the good old days. And in this last maybe 2-3 years or so, they just seem to be springing up all over the place, and I'm all for it. I love that little short story. I recently got the Future Shocks 2080 Future Shocks annual from 1988, the year of my birth. It nearly kicked off an insane collection of annuals, and they got really expensive, so I pulled back from that idea sharp. But the Future Shocks one is real good.
I had at one point it was either one of the 2000 AD, it was either the 2000 AD annual or the Judge Dredd annual, from one of the 90s ones, I think, and it had Dredd, Dredd was there, and there was a sarcophagus, and he was opening a sarcophagus, if I remember correctly.
It's difficult to think too hard.
Yeah.
I think you're right, Will, though. I think there's been a new crop of anthology books recently, particularly sci-fi anthologies. I think there's been a whole bunch of them, and I am all about it. I think it's kind of reminded me how much I quite like short stories and little random stories that don't necessarily go anywhere, I think.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day, weren't we, Zach? Just about
Yeah, we were.
Liking I've kind of recently rediscovered my love of short fiction. Maximum sort of 20 or 30 page little bits of prose and stuff. I've been reading a whole bunch of Isaac Asimov short stories and stuff. So the kind of power and the skill needed to make a whole sort of story like in that is as much of a skill as being able to plot out and plan, a 60 issue, like a 60 issue image book.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
It sort of goes to show that most stories are probably too long.
There is that. I mean, there are some things that could have been shorter, and sometimes it's harder to be short, but sometimes it's better to be short because then you don't outstay your welcome.
I think the real difficult thing is just knowing what the right
to stop.
Yeah, and having that kind of nous, I think, is pretty hard to decide. But I think we've discussed it before, haven't we? There's a crop of like 1-volume books coming out from a lot of publishers at the moment. And it's not exactly an anthology, but I do like that. You kind of dip your toe in the water, you get a good story, and then you move on to something else.
Yeah. I think one of the things that intrigues me most about Silvercoin is the fact that this is a lot of people, I mean, Jeff Lemire aside, obviously, this is a lot of people who, and without sounding melodramatic, are imprisoned at Marvel.
Yeah.
Poor souls, yes.
Have they said if there's like a unifying theme?
Yeah, there's going to be some overarching theme, which is the silver coin. And
right, okay.
I feel like I definitely know more, but I can't remember it. So I'm just going to pretend I don't know more, and that's all I know. So there is going to be a connection between all the stories.
Yeah.
But Ed Brisson, I can't think of the last indie book he did that I have read. I feel like I know I liked his Ghost Rider, but that doesn't feel very indie. And I don't feel like I've read any indie Kelly Thompson books. I feel like she writes Marvel books I think are really cool, and Marvel readers disagree. And
yeah, that's usually how it goes. Yeah.
But it's a group of writers that I'm kind of really excited to see them do horror. I feel like Jeff Lemire is getting more and more horror at times at the moment, and
sad misery horror. Yeah.
Oh
all
yeah.
The way.
Delicious sad misery horror.
It's speaking my language.
And I feel like Ed Brisson is always on the edge of horror. Zdarsky's, we've seen little glimpses of horror in the last couple of years. And I don't know. I feel like I've never had any Kelly Thompson horror, and maybe that's what I need.
We've been missing it.
Yeah. But I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be pretty weird. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
It's a weird group of creators.
It's good names, and I think there's at least 2 or 3 in there that everybody's going to like something from it. And I think that's the pros and cons of an anthology. Is sometimes there's going to be one story that's a bit rubbish, but when it is an anthology, you can just ignore that one.
Yeah, you can just live with it and move on.
Yeah.
I have one last piece of news, and it's, when it's the kind of news that's been mentioned for so long now that it's kind of inevitable, I guess. Sure. So Joe Glass has a new Kickstarter, or will have a new Kickstarter in the next month or so, which is The Miracles. He's mentioned frequently that it's a premise that he's had for a long time, almost as long as he's had the Pride, and it's another superhero book. What do you guys reckon? You want some more Joe Glass superhero in?
Yes.
Has he given how it differs?
No.
Okay.
There was a dramatic pause there. We thought something was good. No. Nothing.
I like the Pride. I'd be happy for more. I just think if it's being sold as like this is a different premise, I kind of want to know what that means. I like the characters and world he's built, but if we're moving away from them, like why? I guess. I
think the thing is, what I've gleaned from past conversations with Joe Glass and kind of his work recently is that he while the Pride has gone on to kind of be definitive of who Joe Glass is and what you expect from him, I think he's got a lot of interest in being more than that. So he did Acceptable Losses, which is kind of this dark, gritty Captain America book. And then he did Glitter Vipers, which is obviously closer to the Pride in some ways, but more real world in others. So the representation there. I mean, to be fair, he always has pretty strong representation, and things are a lot more representative than a lot of mainstream comics. But I feel like this is him trying to do a more classic superhero book, whereas the Pride is strong on its message, shall we say.
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be more classic superheroes, but still with a strong message of diversity and representation and good stuff. And I think this is going to be about Joe Glass showing that he can do everything, and people should give him more work, I guess.
I think that's it. I just wanted to know that it is, if he's going to do something different, is it different? But it certainly sounds it. So I'll give that a go.
Yep.
Good talk, guys.
Yeah.
News.
So that's everything I had this week, news-wise. This month, news-wise, I guess, because I collected it all up into this one bite-sized chunk.
That was January.
I've come across much interest. King in Black has sold better than Future State. Nobody will remember in 2 years. Either way. Someone else's Venom. I don't know. I'm flicking through the news and it's all boring.
I just feel like no matter what time of year it is, you can probably look at Marvel News and go, somebody else's Venom.
Yeah.
And it's probably true.
Yeah.
Who's going to write the book about the STD that they've all got?
Oh, man.
So no, I got nothing for news.
It's sad because it's plausible. That is fine. We don't have to have news. We're already like 20 minutes in. We can afford to move past the news at this point.
Yeah.
And that concludes the news.
And therein which is the end of the news. Yeah. That's how I think the like news on TV should end. Just like we're 20 minutes in. Let's just.
Can't tell you anything else.
Let's just wrap this one up. It's not worth dragging it out. Man.
I only put 20 minutes on the car in the car park. I didn't afford to pay for more, so I've got to leave you now. No more news. I've got to go.
It sort of ruins my story because I can't remember any of the fine details. But there is a day where there was just no news, and on the radio, the presenter came on and said, "There is no news," and then they just played like 15 minutes of Vivaldi, and that was it. Moved on. I can't remember which song it is, but there is a Scroobius Pip song that references that. Excellent.
Also, and this is a long-running joke on every podcast I've done, but if Scroobius Pip wants to make an appearance on Bigger Than Capes, we will have him.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
One day he's going to take me up on it, and we'll see who gets the last laugh. On that bombshell.
That's the way to end the news.
Shall we get started on this month's indie roundup?
In just one question with on that bombshell and stuff. Do you think that in general we can make our when we do a news segment we can make it more like the day to day or Brass Eye?
I like to think we can try.
Yeah.
I'll be like you can be Chris Morris, Zach. Will can be Peter O'Hanrahan. I'll be Alan Partridge. Yes. You're digging yourself a very shallow news grave there, Zach.
It's an oblique 90s reference.
Classy.
I like to think we do an incredible job of routinely alienating our audience.
Yeah. We could just start making up news.
Must have a foot like a traction engine.
Just start making up things like
Yeah. So
truth
comics.
truth behind Saga hiatus was Fiona Staples was blinded from a ray of light from Brian K. Vaughan's shiny head, and we could just make up news stories.
It wouldn't be the first time.
Nope.
That's what most news outlets do these days, as I understand it.
Yeah, whenever we don't have news, we'll just improv based around what we do know about comics.
Yeah, will be a much less funny version of The Hard Times or The Onion.
Yeah.
Speaking of comics.
Yeah, so comics.
Yeah.
So, 4 books. And by the look of the draw, Will, you're up first on the intros.
And I've got the hardest one. I want you all to know that, listening.
You are such a liar.
Listeners, he's wrong.
So, the book I have is Serial Number 1. It was written by Terry Moore. The art was by Terry Moore. The cover colorist was by Steve Hamaker. It was published by Abstract Studios, which is owned by Terry Moore. It's basically Terry Moore's book, and just his book. It is about a mysterious and seemingly unageable woman who purposefully kills a man who is harassing her by kicking him off a cliff. It appears she's probably got some trauma in her past which spurns her on to kill, but it's pretty vague. Serial. I wrote down all the characters' names for our convenience, and there are all of 3. We have our mysterious girl, Kendall, the man she kills, Brandon, and his wife, Jill. Yeah.
So, this book. I know this book was about 20 something. It was like 20 pages.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like 2.
It's an incredibly quick read.
It's like the art is great and lovely and all sorts of stuff, and it has Terry Moore's usual kind of ability to switch between styles and stuff that you got to see in the various sort of Strangers in Paradise books, and stuff but it's so quick.
I think, it's a really quick read, but it's a really decompressed story.
Yes.
Or what there is of a story at this point. Because we don't learn a lot about Kendall, why she's doing what she's doing. I've got to say, I actually found the pace of it quite refreshing. I think in a lot of comics, sometimes you can get where situations or kind of people's actions are very quick, and it is sort of expected of you as the reader to understand that a thing has happened because from one panel to the next, that thing has changed. Somebody changing clothes, for instance. I liked it that we had probably 7 wordless pages of Kendall cleaning a car, changing her clothes, getting on a motorbike, and those 7 wordless pages completely changed who the character of Kendall was without saying a word. And suggested so much in, I said, just purely the art. And I really appreciate that you could spend an entire page just cleaning down a car and getting every detail. And I was really into it.
Yeah, no, that was definitely one of the coolest sort of things. The fact it did actually take its time to do that, that it was just that transformation and that sort of aftermath of the sequence that we just watched, getting to kind of see how the character dealt with the immediate aftermath of it, the kind of cold, just no words, nothing like even that sort of indication you get of sort of you can get sometimes of like heavy sort of panicked breathing or anything. It's just like 100% sort of business like, and it conveys character quite well.
I think like it tells you so much, and I think in a medium which is some might argue broadly 50% kind of script and art, I think to be able to tell so much. I mean, the fact that she's got this bike ready in the woods suddenly means that everything up to that point is completely planned.
Yes.
And it tells you that without any exposition whatsoever. I don't really like much older comic books. It's normally because of that narration that is literally like it's showing you what's happening, it's telling you what's happening, somebody's thinking about what's happening and saying it out loud all at the same time. So to have that entirely stripped away, I thought was really, really cool. I appreciate the fact that actually this doesn't have a story. Like there's no real hook yet, and I think this is a book that will read much better in trade.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree, and I think we get an interesting variety in art. I think the whole like dream sequence portion is wildly different and really shows how good Terry Moore is.
Yeah, because you'd think it was a different artist. It's not. It's all him. But yeah, it almost looks like I brought a different artist in for this bit. But I didn't. It is actually all me and my talent. Yeah.
Like I said, he's got a history of that sort of thing, but it is never still sort of. It's never any less surprising. And impressive to actually see it.
Yeah.
I think there's enough there for me to want to read it, but I think I probably will. This will be a trade wait for me, I think.
Yeah. I think it is going to just... Yeah. I think it's going to feel more rewarding because the kind of slow pace and the dedication to the detail does mean that when you've read 25 pages and you feel like you haven't, it's kind of whilst it's very good, it is kind of weirdly annoying.
It's the weird argument about like value for money in entertainment, isn't it? Like, is it worth the same amount to go and see a film that's an hour and a half that's really good as it is to see a film that's 3 hours but shit? You've paid the same amount of money, so where's like, I don't necessarily need it to be long. I don't think. I would want. If I were to buy the second issue as an issue and not trade weight, I'd want the hook to be in there, like immediately.
It's that different. It's a very different approach to storytelling than you get in a lot of comics these days.
That's it,
and like you say, that in itself is quite refreshing. Like, because it just is telling its story how very much. Like Moore is telling his story very much how he just wants to tell it.
Yeah.
And like it's just like not much happens, but like that tells you a lot.
Yeah.
Like I say, like that was very cool.
And it's all quality. There's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
And it is a slow pace, but what you've got, it's not like another book where you'd just be like, oh, well, I'm not really interested in what's happening next. It's interesting enough that you go, yes, the trade will be really, the trade's going to be good based on that, as opposed to, well, that didn't go anywhere, did it?
I think it scores really high on like vibe, just the look of it and the feel, and that it's creepy and it's insidious, and she's like weirdly ageless. I don't know if you got that from every time he like drew her in a different scenario, she appeared like a different age. Like she seemed to be a teenager right at the beginning on the cliff. When she's revealing her costume, she looks much older, and then when she kind of wakes up in bed, she looks like she could be about 6 or 7. I don't know if that's on purpose to sort of keep you guessing, but no, I'm on board.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So that would then bring us to Matt and I Breathed a Body. So
God, I was
speaking of being on board.
Okay. So, I Breathed a Body, number 1, was written by Zac Thompson, with art by Andy MacDonald, colours by Triona Farrell, and or Farrell. Letterer was Hassan Otsmane Elhau. Yeah. So this book, to try and describe it exactly, it's I believe that Zac described it as, what was it? Boy gets injected with the internet, maybe the internet, and then stabs himself until his face comes off. But no, it's about like a sort of a kind of problematic streamer, the creation of like a biological sort of internet that seems to
sort of
like and sort of biotechnology, kind of internal politics sort of that company, and stuff like it's and kind of like the information becoming like being transmitted by sort of biological means, and like the internet or becoming almost part of people. I guess.
I think that's it. Like, it's been so entrenched in society that it becomes society, and nothing is then more important than.
Yeah, it's like, because it talks about it talks about like a Mycena network, which is like a real thing with mushrooms, and like fibers and sort of strands and stuff like.
Somebody's been watching the Discovery.
No, someone's just like my dad got really into mycology at one point when I was a teenager. Like, so I know a little bit about like various funguses. I actually went on a fungus and walk about 6 months back. Through like a really, really nice the grounds at a really nice stately home.
Good.
So I know a little bit about this sort of stuff, but no.
Did you find any internets while you were there with the mushrooms?
I didn't try to plug into any of the mushrooms. Like, I didn't try to use any of them as like a Wi-Fi hotspot. No.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I mean, I think you've done a pretty good job on a book which is nearly impossible to explain in anything less than an essay.
Out of curiosity, what issue of I Breathed a Body do you think it will be where you understand what's going on?
How many issues is it going to run?
That many.
That wasn't the question, Matt.
Because I'm going to say it's either going to be the last issue, or it's going to get cancelled the issue right before it's going to explain to me what's going on. But no, it's definitely an interesting book in some ways, like that I quite liked. Like all the stuff about, like, there's some stuff in there that's kind of about the transferal of like memory from ourselves to the internet, like, and to technology, like, and that's that sort of thing I really like to think about, because I've read a bit in the past about the kind of like how memory has changed over like through history, and how people remember things and how people contextualize kind of things, and you know, and like things like storytelling and stuff, and how that changes based on how people interact with the world around them, and the means they have to tell said stories. Like, so that kind, like exploring that as an evolution of that is, yeah, like very cool to me. But also baby injected with internet. Yeah.
In conclusion, baby injected with internet. It took me. I mean, the fact that very premise, it took me a long time to figure out that was what was going on. I had to go back over that panel several times before I actually realised. That's how confused I just was. It was a permanent state of confusion. I felt like I had a handle on it, and then I realised that no, I do not have a handle on what this book is.
Definitely, I was the same. Like, I had to go through this book probably 2-3 times.
There are still so many questions, because this is a kind of, we start with like occult vibes and hooded figures in robes sitting in the corner, and then we're in a kind of not so distant future sci-fi book. And
the book is 100% like occulty. Like, it's very much just like a modern approach to that.
Yeah,
it's a lot more sort of contemporary in its setting than I thought it would be, though.
Yeah. And I do think, you know what, it varies, but there are some pages where the art is really good.
And then there are pages where
the art looks like it's been a little bit too rushed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of building blocks of a really good book in here. I think there's some stuff in the art, like some quite interesting panel stuff at places, and interesting kind of perspectives where there's a scene where they're eating dinner together, and it's kind of shot from outside a window. It doesn't need to be, but it just adds a bit of extra kind of flavor, and those little bits I like. Oddly enough, I very rarely notice, but I really like the lettering. I like
I was literally about to say that, this like the kind of collaboration between letterer and writer with the highlighting,
kind of highlighters instead of.
No, right. The highlighting we're getting into. I've got a whole thing about the highlighting. Right. At first, I feel like the highlighted words have got some kind of usefulness or significance. And then there comes a point where, no, they don't.
No, they don't.
It's just a man going mad with a highlighter pen.
I literally wrote them all out to see if there was a secret message.
Right?
Spoiler alert, there was not a secret message.
Sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, I accepted very early on that it's simply just an artistic choice, and I enjoyed it.
No, I think it's for emphasis.
But not all the time, because there are certain words that don't need to be emphasized.
Like, and to draw your attention to certain to certain words. Like, there are some places where I think it actually does change the way you read. Change the way you read the text. Like reading, like the influencer Milo, his like non-apology. I think that having the highlighters there, the highlighted bits there, actually really adds more to that vibe.
There is a narration box where the word highlighted, Matt, is if.
But then when you read it like, if.
I think it's really good for emphasis. I think it like makes you pay attention to certain words more that like are like useful and important, like that you know. Sometimes it'll be like when it's introducing like a character or a location. Sometimes it's for emphasis, and I don't know whether it's also meant to make it feel like you're looking at like a text interface.
Yeah.
Where someone can like when you're working on like a digital medium and you can just highlight various things, like almost like these things would be like hyperlinks or something.
You see, I went old school before the internet, and basically I thought about textbooks and people just highlighting, but also sort of games people used to play at college, like let's highlight some random words and make people who read this book after us think there was some meaning behind it. These words are important for they're not, we're just having fun with the highlighter.
It's just like the anti-Hickman, like creating all this language, and then it turns out nonsense anyway.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know. This is a weird one. I think the premise is interesting.
Yeah.
Question mark.
Yeah.
But I feel like narration and dialogue is a bit too there at times. I feel like in noticeable contrast to Serial, I feel like I Breathe the Body, whole lot of words.
Maybe too many words. Yeah.
Pretty busy on the text.
But back to the kind of occult feel for a second. I've just gone back to look at like certain pages, and there's like flesh kind of everywhere in this book, in a way like when you see one of the characters kind of go to make dinner, and he goes down to like a cellar or something where like there's all this lab grown meat and stuff, like these carcasses, and
it don't look right, man.
Many legs.
No,
many legs.
Yeah.
There's so many sort of these little kind of occult feeling things, and then you get like the sort of last page reveal, or like penultimate sort of page reveal of like stabbing with amulet and skin being ripped away, or possibly him being turned inside out again.
I think like Test of Time will say one way or the other, but this will either be like a really great blending of horror and sci-fi, or will just be two genres that just aren't getting on. Like, right now the two halves of it don't feel fully connected. We're kind of, as you said, we're kind of bookended with this quite eldritch looking horror.
I do think that it will read better in single issues. Actually, it's one of these rare books where I would definitely rather continue reading it as singles, for just like for the way that horror in this sort of way works for me, where I don't want to be able to rush on to the next part. I want it to be left lingering,
to sit with you for a bit.
Yeah. Also, the final panel is a Harlan Ellison reference, and I can like never not like that.
Just out of curiosity, did anyone else read the
yes, the interview
article thing?
Yeah,
about
it
Milo?
left me more confused.
I appreciated it as like someone who's read tech sort of like who's read these like fawning like interviews and essays before about terrible, pointless startups and like Silicon Valley sort of wunderkinds who have later been revealed to have been valued at $2 or $3 billion only for it to turn out that they weren't actually making anything and stuff. And it's like the tech press and like celebrity press kind of writing these sorts of things, and it's got a good feel of that, except about something that we know is actually weird and interesting. But it's got this same sort of like maybe like a person at more like that sort of a person slightly out of touch with what they're with like the demographic that this is supposed to be sort of reaching out to, and the sort of thing where they're explaining it to the parents of the people who like they're writing about. Like, so I have read my fair share of these sorts of articles, and so I quite appreciated it. It does a good job of conveying that vibe.
I agree, and I think it informs Milo a little bit because we almost don't get enough Milo, I think, in this.
Yeah.
And then his face falls off. So
yeah, I wonder whether that's deliberate in the sense of like he's seemingly like literally everywhere in the world,
and yet
so
nowhere.
Us only having him for a few pages kind of makes sense to me, I guess.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see the less is more with the most famous man on the planet. You don't have too much of him.
Overall, I thought there's promise to it without it being a complete like success from beginning to end.
Yeah, I did very much like a lot of the fashion choices in it.
Yeah.
It feels like very sort of clothes that like Milo is dressed in this very sort of like streetwear, like very expensive streetwear sort of way. Like his social media manager, like Anne, has like these really gorgeous like blousey sort of dress thing like that's just like gorgeous, looks like something that you might see kind of in like you might see something sort of like that's meant to be an affordable version of at like a Matalan or something, but like this version is probably like more than we make in a month. It's like there's really sort of great looking clothes and very real sort of trendy sort of looking clothing and haircuts and everything. It's cool in that regard.
One thing I've just thought of, just sort of flicking back through the pages now, is that maybe something is unfair to level at just a single issue, but I realise that it never really shows you what the world is like under this.
No, you see a tiny little part of it. You see the offices and the house, and that's like it.
That's it. You kind of see the people who are in the inner circle of this thing, and it might well be something which is expanded, but I think if you set this premise up that kind of social media has become like more important than money, it's become the sort of the currency of its day. I kind of want to see how that works. I kind of want to see what what your ideas are of how that really functions. Like I say, maybe unfair to say that to the first 20 odd pages.
I don't think it really, like, I didn't need to see the intricacies of any of that. Like, I got my impressions of it from kind of from kind of the things we're told and shown sort of as it goes. Like, yeah. But I understand like why you might want more. So yeah, I guess that brings us on to haha.
Haha. Oh man,
it's probably one of the weirdest ordering experiences. You go into the shop. Have you got any copies of haha?
I like to think that's it. Either that, or you just start laughing maniacally and they go, "Got it, yeah."
I know, hook you up.
Yeah.
Joke.
So, haha, number 1, and it's from Image Comics. It's W. Maxwell Prince, Vanessa Del Rey, Chris O'Halloran, and good old Neon.
Which is a great name.
Fabulous.
And so this is the first issue in, again, a kind of an anthology thing that W. Maxwell Prince is doing. He's doing stories about clowns.
Hells yeah, he is.
Oh, I didn't know this was going to be an anthology. I missed that.
Yeah, he's doing like a bunch of one-shots about clown stuff for a reason. I don't know what the reason is. And in this first of issues, it's all about Bart. And Bart is a clown at an amusement park. His world's fallen apart around him. You know, he's about to lose his job. His family think he's a joke. His best friend just robbed him. But Bart still thinks he's the luckiest guy in the world. And hilarity does not ensue.
Not for Paul.
And he might be right.
He might
just be right.
He might also have a streak of being delusional.
Or being dead.
Or both.
I've got a couple of early things I want to throw in before I forget. So there are 2. One, the front cover, and this is, I don't know if this is intentional or by accident, but the fact that we've just got surnames for creators, so it's just Prince Del Rey, which is, you know, literally translates to Prince the King. And
that is actually right.
That's good.
I like that.
Yeah.
Also,
maybe this entire project is just for that purpose.
Just for that one reference.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that this issue is called Bartleby Rejects the Premise, which has this kind of like Chainsaw Kittens, The Auteurs, Belle and Sebastian, like song name vibe.
Yeah.
And all I could think after reading that was like, oh man, what would that song be like? And could I write it?
Or I haven't read the book. Just sat and thought about that.
Yeah, that was
sat
all
here
it took
composing.
for me. And then sat around thinking about, you know, ooh, should this have cello on it? Probably. But yeah, Bartleby Rejects the Premise is almost entirely my favorite thing in words to come out of this month's comic. Just those 4 words back to back are like, ooh, yeah.
It gets you.
Yeah.
Better than that's the biggest problem. Better than the issue.
Sadly, I would agree with you on that one.
Oh well, yeah, I'm going to come from a different point of view.
No, I do like this, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I feel, or if I fully understand. But
I don't think you should understand. Not completely. Like, I think it reads a bit like a Future Shock, having brought them up earlier. It's that like one-shot story with a twist at the end.
Yeah, it's an O. Henry.
Yeah.
And But I really like Ice Cream Man.
Yeah.
Which this feels again like the clown version of that. Like that was kind of anthology-ish, just tied together by this weird Ice Cream Man.
Yes.
I wonder if there's going to be any connective tissue in this. Like, well, I have no idea, but if there's going to be anything that connects these together. But just as a little kind of, I don't know, just weird like bad luck tale. I really enjoyed it. And then when you do get to the end and like it's so unclear as to what exactly has happened to him.
Yeah.
But I think that's fine. Like either option is fun for me.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's some really good dialogue and narration, and I think ultimately this is a really well put together issue. It's just an issue that is surreal from almost the get go. I think it's just like, well, goddamn, this is weird.
See, I thought it was weird, but I also thought it was familiar weird in that it feels like this sort of weird has been done before. I don't know why, because I don't think it has, but that's the vibe I got was this is weird, but at the same time, I don't feel like it's original weird.
Have you read any Ice Cream Man, Angela?
No, that's the weird. That's the weird thing.
It has been done before by this guy.
Yeah.
But I've not read Ice Cream Man, so I was coming into it not really, having not read that and not aware of his shtick. And yet, it did feel...
So why was shtick so accusational just then?
I don't know.
This guy and his clowns.
These guys. I will say my favourite bit of the whole book is the little art reference to It.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I really liked. I liked I liked the character in his own weird delusional way. And I liked his weird little dog, and I liked the little art Easter egg. But yeah, I don't know. Something just didn't. It just felt weird and slightly. I feel like I've read this before, even though I haven't.
I can see that from like me and Will, who've read Ice Cream Man. I'm not sure why this seems so familiar for you, but I'm sure it will become apparent at some point.
There's probably a book I've read somewhere in the deep dark distant past that this reminds me of that I can't place right now.
I did wonder, is it just because Vanesa Del Rey did Redlands, which we discussed last year?
Do you know what? It could be. It could very well be. Yeah.
I mean, that's a valid reason. One of my favourite things, actually, other than the It reference, which was good, is that when we first get that like double page spread of Funville, two of the stands, the like names on the stands are layouts by John Starr and pencils and ink by Vanessa Del Rey.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff.
Oh, goddamn, I missed that.
I don't think I've spotted that the first time, but it's a nice little weird work into the designness.
Now, don't take this the wrong way, but I think my favourite bit of art is the like 2-page, 8-panel process of a bullet going into this man's brain.
I mean,
and that's what Will will be telling his therapist tomorrow night.
This is why we judge Will sometimes.
I think the reason we need to judge Will is the fact that he counted the panels on.
I can count.
See, maybe that reminded me of an early episode of CSI when they first pioneered all those sorts of things about bullets going in people's brains with effects. Maybe that's what was familiar. Who's to say?
I regularly think about some of the craziest episodes of those sorts of television all the time. I know this is a divergence, but one of my favourites is this time when it might be NCIS even, but it's one of those shows where they have the bones of a victim.
Is it bones?
It's not Bones, weirdly, though I did recently actually learn about an episode of Bones where they have to try and figure out if Kennedy was shot by a second sniper.
Whether somebody shot a boat.
But this one, they have the bones of like a victim, and they're scanning them into the crime computer.
That's CSI. That's CSI New York.
Let me finish. But the bones have been scraped onto them. They have computer code that's for malware. They're infected with a virus by scanning bones.
That's beautiful.
I'm sorry, I never get to talk about this, and I need to. Has anyone else seen the episode of CSI New York where a parrot and a cat kill a couple?
Yes.
No.
I have.
Isn't it the best fucking thing?
That's why CSI New York is the best of the CSIs. Because, I mean, there's
also the first to go away.
Yeah, the guy killed by pigeons. That was good.
If the last scene isn't a cat and a parrot looking at each other and winking, then
it was.
I mean, jump in a river, because that is the best ending to any TV show.
Them just celebrating the fact they got away with it.
They couldn't prosecute.
I doubt anyone else here has ever watched Baywatch Nights. But second season of Baywatch Nights, when it becomes the X-Files.
Yeah.
There's an episode. So I'm just thinking about crime stuff now. There's an episode where David Hasselhoff and his partner at the private detective agency go into a computer game, and his partner in that talks about having gone to mist tournaments in college. It's a line that comes up all the time, and we're just like, does she mean speed running, or like was she early on in the speed running community? Are we going to see her show up this year on AGDQ?
Of any game they could have possibly picked to decide to make a tournament out of, they go for the point and click.
The point puzzle game.
Puzzle game missed. Excellent.
I'm going to desperately try and get us back onto the book we're talking about.
One last second. Angela, let's ditch Zach for an episode and just do a Baywatch Nights.
Oh, yes.
Special. We can do the one where the wind makes people kill each other, or the one where there's a surfing alien who can control lightning. Because that could tie into the Fantastic Four, because we could pretend it's a sequel to Rise of the Silver Surfer.
Rise of the Alien Surfer.
Rise of the Alien Lightning Controlling Surfer.
Never release it to now I want to be on it.
So back to the book. I liked it. Like I said, it's an odd book but I really liked the range in the art, like the ability to go from like the really sort of realistic kind of those scratchy and very like heavy, like lots of lines and stuff, to the kind of much more cartoony, like when he's driving back and he sees his he sees his clown friend who mugged him on the way, and like now he's just this like very caricature sort of a clown, like all sorts of like all like balls and like Mickey Mouse gloves, stuff, and like how the kind of the lines shift from that sort of very thick, very dark to like the only sort of extra lines being like cross hatching on his jacket and trousers. Like I love that sort of ability to kind of shift. It's very, very cool, and like the like the balloon sculpture people, like with his family.
I think I may have just noticed this, and it might be complete bollocks, so bear with. But I think that like every time he is doing something or somewhere which he finds like really mundane or not part of his clown life is when the art is really like dark and scratchy. So it's when he's at home with his family, it's when he's in the bank, it's when he's getting his check, and when he's outside or amongst the circus or like amongst the things that he thinks are important,
or inside his own brain.
Well, like that bullet. I think at that point, like everything becomes quite
almost like the colours. Like the colours replace the scratchiness. Like the colours replace that ink.
When he's driving home and there are the balloons in the sky and sort of dinosaurs poking their necks over trees and the skies are oranges and yellows and pinks and it's quite vivid from the previous, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 pages inside the bank, that outside from him, as dressed as a clown, everything else is quite just sort of dark and shadowy.
Yeah.
And I think it might show the things that he cares about versus, like, he doesn't really actually care about like the money to feed his children. Cares about being a clown. Like, that's just a byproduct of what he wants to do with his life, which is be a clown.
Yeah, it's
simple man who loves clowning.
Yeah, it's like the family was something you did because society tells you to be happy and had to have a lucky life and you have to have the wife and the 2 kids and the small dog.
That's it, isn't it? It's wife, 2 kids, small dog in American suburbia. It's like the most mundane possible lifestyle, but he just wants to be a clown.
I did actually like, talking of like some of the lines we liked earlier. Like, I love like Phil, his clown friend. Just like, I didn't need the quote, but I just love the kind of very sort of working stiff sort of way of talking about Thomas Hobbes by just saying like, "Oh, Tommy Hobbes was right." Like when it's just like life is nasty, brutish and short. Like I just love referring to like Thomas Hobbes as old Tommy Hobbes, whilst you're dressed in clown, like in full clown makeup, everything like that speaks to me.
I can get that. I can get that. That's who Matt is.
Like it reads almost like it speaks to me in the same way as like a Peanuts strip. It reads like something that like you'd get in there, like the way that they'll say like old Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
But talking about a classical philosopher.
I want to just notice as well that he turns into a balloon at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're all balloons together.
Yeah.
So the next issue is going to be Prince with Zoe Thorogood. Thorogood.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious as to what direction you can take this series if you're doing clown one shots. I think I've just got so many questions as to what that really means.
Sad clown one shot.
Well, I'm hoping that it's just a vessel for his like clearly mad brain. That they're just a backdrop. They're just a reason to tie these stories together. Like, I kind of get the impression that he just has these little kind of short, twisted ideas.
Yeah.
Wants to put them down, but then wants to tie them with something. And I think this is just clowns.
Clowns are easier than bank managers and things like that. Like,
True.
Accountants.
I do wonder if this stemmed from Ice Cream Man. Like, did he have a clown issue of Ice Cream Man? And then he's like, oh man, I reckon I could do like 10 of these. And it's like, bam, next series, Clowns Man. That's who I am today. And is that going to be it? He's just going to... First it was Ice Cream, then it's Clowns. It can go in any surreal birthday party themed direction.
Magicians.
Yeah. Sad magicians.
Bad magicians.
Actually edit that out as well. That's another good idea.
But yeah, I liked this issue, and I am curious as to what comes next. And also a little bit terrified of what comes next, I think.
Yeah.
I have just written in my notes that this was, unnerving and surreal. And I think those are the words that were best suited to it.
I'd add one more word. Clowns.
Sorry, yeah, unnerving and surreal clowns.
I'm not immediately like drawn to horror as one of my, but when it's, I think I need that level of oddity, of weirdness, to draw me in. I think classic horror stuff, particularly like classic monsters, they really don't do anything for me.
But you put Frankenstein in a wig and some face paint. Ba-bam, done.
That's it. I'm on board. Make Frankenstein pull a Franken rabbit out of his Franken hat, and I'm there.
Yeah, get him, like, get Frankenstein's monster on Frankenstein's monster's unicycle.
Or a tiny little car.
Yeah. See how many classic, like, Universal monsters you can fit in a classic car.
Yeah. Wolfman, the Mummy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah. Invisible Man.
Yeah.
I mean, the Invisible Man, you can just, like, would actually, like, it would defeat the purpose of the Invisible Man to have him as a clown, because you'd have to put on all the pancake. Like, so you'd just be like, well, guess
the visible man.
You're visible, though with no eyes.
He could paint them on his eyelids, and then when he blinked.
Apparently but being then invisible isn't impressive enough.
I think there's something altogether more menacing about being visible, but with invisible eyes.
Yeah. Yes.
Definitely.
That is deeply unsettling. I am not happy with this.
Would you find it more disturbing to have invisible eyes or an invisible like mouth, so that when you opened your mouth,
you could just see like the insides?
You just see that sort of hollow man, sort of like.
Oh man, we are so far off track. It's the track is gone.
Yeah. Did the track ever really exist?
Dib, dib, dib.
Right. Shall we get back on A track? I can't guarantee how good this track will be. It's a bit rickety. I've stuck it together with, David Wire and duct tape, but it'll hold for now. So
used all the ingenuity and skills you were taught.
As a brownie, because I was never a scout. But however, Scout's Honor #1 from Aftershock is written and created by David Pepose. The art is by Luca Casalanaguida. The colorist is Matt Miller. And the letterer is Carlos M. Manuel. There is a whole list of other people on the page that I'm gonna give them some credit here. So the credits also say Andy Clark with Jose Villarrubia did the cover. Bent Schoonover with Kurt Michael Russell did the incentive cover. What incentive? Charles Pritchard did the logo design. Good for him. And Christina Harrington was the editor. Alas, I have no production credit for you today.
But yeah,
it's other than that.
Yeah.
So the premise of Scout's Honor, weirdly, it involves scouts. So in a post-apocalyptic future, we meet some Ranger Scouts. Kit and Dev are the ones we have to care about because we all know what happens to Edward. Poor Edward. R.I.P.
More like Deadwood, am I right?
Yeah, that's the one. So basically, Kit is like the bestest scout, whatever did scout. Gets a merit badge and everything for killing a gamma boar. Yes. So
the most metal words in the world, right?
Gamma boar.
All caps, no space.
Yeah. I love pigs, so I was happy to see a gamma pig.
So there's a bit of rivalry between Kit and Dev. Turns out Kit's hiding something. Kit may not be what they say they are in terms of gender. But basically then Kit and Dev have to go on a dangerous mission to check out the highwaymen who are causing the trouble. So basically, the Ranger Scouts are a cult led by the Scoutmaster, who sort of impose their law and order on the people. But the highwaymen live out of the civilization. Therefore, they have to undertake a dangerous mission to check out the threat of the highwaymen. And secrets are revealed with regards to the truth about the Ranger Scouts.
Yep. I liked this book a lot.
I did too.
It was my favourite.
I did three.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Did have, and this is
Good
much
discussion.
like the Bell and Sebastian-ness of Bartleby rejects the premise. As soon as they said highwaymen, and I was already obviously in a music place with Gamma Boar, but as soon as they said highwayman, all I could think about was Adamant, and you know,
because you are the dandy highwayman.
I'm too scared to mention. Spend my cash on looking flash and grabbing your attention.
I was as a younger man. I was a scout, and
I really thought you were going to say I was as a younger man a new romantic, and we were going a whole different.
I was a boy in Scouts. We were allowed to have Flock of Seagulls haircut, and
it was a thing.
And this is remarkably accurate.
Yeah.
we
I
did
was
kill
not
gamma
allowed
boars.
Yeah.
Many of us died.
Yeah, see, we never got to do any of this fun in the Brownies. I never got to shoot arrows at, gamma boars or go on dangerous missions to uncover, highwaymen or be kidnapped by a mysterious, nameless, disc-shaped robot.
I never got to be a scout or a brownie, but I did dress as a highwayman for a Halloween party once, so...
That's good. There you go.
That's kind of...
I even volunteered as a beavers leader for a little while.
Was there any gamma boar killing involved in the beavers?
Not for the beavers. No. That starts at Cubs level.
Oh, dear.
So after some technical difficulties, not pointing the finger at anyone. So, it's good to be back and to be returning to Scout's Honor.
Which is a really good book, because we were getting into before Gamma Balls happened and kidnapped Will. It was tragic.
Who's muted.
He's either muted or we can't hear him.
Or he's just fucking with us.
I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, God damn it.
Too much of my internet got into a baby, and it all went awry.
It was these mushrooms are not reliable.
Babyation poisoning. So it's I really liked this book. I loved all of the kind of the talk all the way that everyone kind of thinks in terms of merit badges and the Scouts code, everything that's it's a fun premise to rebuild a society on. I say fun. But
inverted commas. Fun.
Yes,
but it's like scouting for boys, isn't it? It's that kind of scouting manual that they've built this world around. Does anybody know Will Self?
Yes.
I'm not sure what I make of the man entirely, but he did write a book once about a hard man who gets sent to prison and knows he's never going to see his son. So writes him a book about what it means to be a man. And in this version's head, that is like being a brute, being mean, taking what you want, being aggressive. And then thousands of years later, after society's collapsed, they dig up this book, and their entire society is built around this one guy's insane version of what it means to be a man. And it's kind of got that similar premise as After the World's End. They've got this one manual, and they apply it like religion, and to the point that their entire way of life is built around being a rad scout.
Yeah, it's that same way of like the kind of like classic sort of Fallout stuff of like a vault with like a premise for experimentation and social restructuring and stuff. This time it is just what if scouts, but then there's the actual then there's the twist, which is very much that, like the kind of deliberate sort of recreation of how these people kind of interact with each other. Is this kind of deliberate restructuring around it, this sort of attempt to kind of indoctrinate people in this like hyper sort of structured chauvinistic manner to kind of inspire them to be the next generation of incredible soldiers that America will need to reclaim the wastes. And instead, they just basically become another gang.
Yeah. What I liked was the fact that this whole premise, we find out, is built basically on a lie.
On a lie, yeah.
On a lie. But you also have Kit, who is lying to the cultish people whose cult is built on lies about who they are. And that was I liked that parallel. I really liked Kit as a character. I think David Pepose does characters very well. And I think, yes, he's a cis man, and, we have to go into the nature of, certain creators of certain genders writing characters of certain genders. I don't think that's a problem here.
No, I didn't feel that.
Which I like. I felt like it was authentic, it was true, and you could definitely sort of sympathise and empathise with Kit, which I really liked.
Yeah, again, I say it as a cis man, that like it is something that can sometimes be handled poorly, but here so far hasn't been the centre enough to kind of know for sure, but seems to be being handled.
Yeah, I mean, we're only an issue in, and
exactly.
Yeah, so there is the potential for this to go horrifically wrong.
Yes.
I have enough faith in the creative team that isn't going to be the case, because I think the art really works.
Yes.
For revealing what's going on.
It's genuinely like captures these kind of like all the like that kind of particular stage of youth and development where where biological sex is kind of hard to tell, like as long as certain sort of secondary characteristics are sort of disguised, and Kit, you just believe any way that you were told, up until the reveal.
Yeah, and then you can go back and then see it. So it's not at all obvious. The reveal's kind of, I wouldn't say shocking. I suppose it's surprising.
Yeah.
But when you get that reveal, you can then go back and you can actually see, it makes
exactly.
sense.
That the art never kind of gives it away, but is, when going back is quite again, just you're like, oh yeah, no, that,
yeah.
And just we talked a lot about how much we like post-apocalyptic books on this podcast, and different types of them and different kind of approaches to the aftermath.
I think we might be due for a break in post-apocalypticness.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's a favourite topic among indie books.
Yeah, and what does it say about the last, like, you know, year?
Yeah.
Had such a wealth of.
Hopefully,
yeah.
Well, hopefully, we'll somehow find a way to be on the verge of like post-capitalism, like, and then we'll all be happy and we'll have no more need for post-apocalyptic literature because the future will only be bright, comrades.
Oh man. So, all in all, it sounds like we're all firmly united in liking Scout's Honor.
I will read this in singles. I reread this 3 times, not because I had to, because podcast and I needed to get down what happened in it. Or read it several times like I breathed a body to understand what on earth is going on.
Yeah.
This I genuinely chose to reread because I enjoyed it that much.
Yes.
That's a very good sign.
Yeah, I flicked through it a few times. Like, I read through it thoroughly once and flicked through it a few times just to kind of refresh myself on it. Like, in a way, because I enjoyed it and wanting to kind of, like I said, look back over it for things I might have missed. Because I was like, oh, this book's gorgeous, and like, I want to do things like go back and look at all the little sort of the merit badges, and like, I want to go and look at the big pig,
and mourn poor Deadwood.
I agree with you, Matt, and I think if Will hadn't had to go to his emergency clown meeting, he would agree with us
yes.
too.
Thank you, Zach, for agreeing with me on the glorious future we look forward to once capitalism is gone.
And we base our cult on Ranger Scouts.
So, shall we go to kind of our individual sort of feelings of ranking the books we read for this month?
Yes. Matt, why don't you start?
Yeah.
Well, the answer to that is very, very clear, Zach, because I'm not prepared. No. So I would say that, like, in kind of the last sort of in like that sort of 4th place would probably, like, I really, really liked it, but without more issues, I couldn't sort of, like, I couldn't tell you, and I couldn't give it any more. Was Serial, probably.
Okay.
Like, and that's more just a case of it with its pacing, which I have kind of both like praised and kind of said feels awkward, like for a first issue. This book would be much, much higher if I had more of it to read, I think. Like, I feel like it might, it could have been like a second or a first sort of book. But for now, it's kind of in that sort of last place. Like, then it's difficult for me to kind of pick between Haha and I Breathed a Body. Like, but I think next is probably Haha. Because again, I liked Haha quite a bit. I thought the art was gorgeous, and there was some great little kind of bits of storytelling in it. But I, obviously, with it being like one and done stories, what I want sometimes is to that feeling of excitement and interest for what exactly is going to happen next. And like, whilst Haha has that in the sense of, well, I get another totally different clown story, not having any sense of what that's going to be is exciting, but doesn't give me something to sort of latch onto in the same way. Whereas
Yeah.
I Breathe the Body is like maybe flawed but interesting in the sense of like I'm definitely interested to see where it goes, and see whether the kind of whether its particular sort of genre mashup works, like the kind of biological kind of science fiction horror, occulty stuff. It's an interesting enough situation and premise for me to want to see where it's going to go. And then, Scouts Honor. I just found it quite a charming little book. I think it's got real promise.
I agree. I think that's...
So, Zach.
All right, so different from Matt. I think
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not. I could have, if you'd asked me 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, 4, 3, and 2 could have probably swapped around.
So I think in reverse order. I Breathe the Body, Serial, Ha, Scouts Honor.
Yeah. I could have totally gone with that as well.
I think Scouts Honor is the most interesting and has so much potential and so many directions it can go in. Ha, I feel like I'm not even crazy about clowns, and I think I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Serial, I think, is going to be a hell of a trade, and even though I don't know what it's really about, I Breathe the Body, I feel like is the book I know the least about, though. I feel like there's a lot to digest. I kind of wonder how it's gonna come together. Whereas Serial is not much in quite a lot of pages, I feel like I Breathe the Body is almost a trade in one issue, and it all needs so much space to breathe that I feel like it's going to be a very intense and chaotic experience. But don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to read all of this, be it in trade, singles, sent to me by Angela, I don't know, hand recounted, like verbally recounted by Matt, I don't know.
Yeah, like oral tradition.
Yeah, passed down from generation to generation. So yeah, slightly different from Matt, but only in a complete sense.
I could have 100% gone with that as my order as well. Like, the only sort of fixed point this time for me was Scouts Honor.
Yeah, I agree. How about you, Angela?
Mine was the same as yours. Mine was the same ranking, and it's been that way for a while. But let's go number 4, I Breathe the Body, purely because I just don't know what's going on. I'm so confused. Mushrooms, baby internet, what? And I like to have a little bit more of an idea about what's going on when I've read that much content, because there's a lot in there, and yet I don't understand it still. I would say Serial at 3 because it will read really, really well in trade. It's not great in and of itself, but there is clear potential there that it's just crying out that yes, in a trade this will be really, really good. Ha, even though it was weird, I like the fact that it has its own little narrative in there, its own little story. You know, I really liked the art in it. So, yeah. And Scout's Honor, I was probably biased to like it anyway because of who's written it.
Yeah.
But I was still actually, it was better than I thought. My expectations were quite high.
Yeah.
And it actually exceeded my expectations anyway. Because, like I said, there's a lot of different, there's all sorts of threads going on. You've got the Ranger Scout cult, you've got Kit as a character, an identity, you've got the weird disky robot that shows holograms of the
we
future.
didn't even mention that.
Like, if you put a weird disky robot of any sort in there, that's automatically.
We didn't even mention the.
I'm mentioning it now, so we
robot.
can squeeze it in there.
Thank you.
And yeah, and then you've got the Highwayman versus the Ranger Scouts, Dev, all those little things that I think could make a really interesting story. So yeah, I'll stick with that. I was going to stick with it anyway. It could have been rubbish, and I'd have probably stuck with it for the creative team. But never mind.
It's nice that for once we all actually have the same number one, and we'll pretend that. Hey, Will, what's your number one book? Scout's Honor. Fantastic, thanks, Will.
Do we have? Has he managed to send us a message in the form of some sort of clown balloon?
It's nice to actually have, like, the very rare, not split down the middle on what the top book is of the week.
Yes, I concur.
Yeah. Next month we'll be back to normal, and there will be arguments, and we won't agree on anything. But we've started the new year off nicely in that there's more agreement than usual.
Yeah, it's to remind us that we're all friends.
Yes.
Ish.
Zac, you sat through 8 and a bit hours of New Japan Wrestling with me the other day. If that doesn't mean we're friends.
No comment. No, yeah, okay, fine, we're friends. Whatever. Jeez. Ugh, God, this guy. No, this has been a fun, interesting chat. It's a shame Will vanished. And
he was kidnapped by gamma boars.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think it's been an interesting selection of books this January.
Yeah. So Zac, do you want to tell everyone again just about our sponsors before we wrap up?
So, much like they were an hour and a half ago, our sponsors are still Travelling Man, still based in Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle and York. Yeah, nailed it. They still sell comics, manga, all manner of nerdery. But currently you can find them online at travellingman.com. And you can find us online at biggerthancapes.com or at biggerthancapes on the Twitter or biggerthancapes on the Facebook or...
Yeah, or just like...
Or you could just send a
or just
smoke
like
signal.
Throw a rock with a letter attached to it.
Yeah, send up smoke signals. It's all good.
It's all good. And I like to think that we've, proven this month that, comics are bigger than capes. And
turns out that the bigger capes was inside us all along.
They're just not bigger than clowns.
So we've been Angela, Matt, Will, and Zac, and we will continue to be. We'll also continue to be bigger than capes.
Yes.
Bigger than capes.
Is that what is that it? Is that the end?
I don't think we could top that.